We get cut off here. This is part 2 of our section, our 7th evening lecture, proper distinction between law and gospel. A link of a copy of this book will be in the description. In conclusion, Shemens writes in his local theology, in the chapter on justification, quote, Paul states distinctly that the righteousness which is valid in the sight of God is revealed in the gospel, apart from the law. Hence, the principal matter in the inquiry regarding justification is that the true and proper distinction between the law and the gospel be fixed and carefully maintained. Is there any other light besides the one furnished by the true distinction between the law and the gospel that has so forcibly broken up the dense darkness of the Pope's dominion? The darkness of the papacy has not been dispelled by any other light than the appearance of the teaching that there is a distinction to be made between the law and the gospel. Great councils of the church wanted to make an attempt at reforming the church. Mighty emperors had undertaken this task. What did they accomplish? Nothing. Matters went from bad to worse. What is the reason why a poor, miserable monk succeeded in this work? No doubt it was because he put the candlestick of this doctrine back in the holy place. He might have preached in ever so evangelical a fashion. Christians would not have been comforted. For the moment they would have come across the law, they would have exclaimed, I've been in error after all. I have to keep the commandments of God if I want to enter life. Here is the point where most of the reformers before the Reformation were at fault. Huss preached the gospel exceedingly well, but he did not show us here is the proper distinction between the law and the gospel. For that reason his work, his attempt at reformation did not endure. May God then, who has kindled this light for us, preserve it unto us. I am thinking of you in particular when I say this. We who are old will soon be in our graves. The light began to shine once more in our time. See to it that it is not put out again. You are following a wrong track if you imagine that you have comprehended this whole teaching in these few hours. If this light is not carefully guarded, it will soon go out. For instance, we find that this light was still burning in the days when the earliest writings of the church fathers were composed. But in the writings of the ecclesiastical writers who followed them, no definite statement is found regarding the distinction between law and the gospel. That is the reason why the papacy in a later age made such a rapid headway. The same danger is now threatening us. The principal passage of Scripture establishing our thesis is Romans chapter 10, 2-4. For I bear them record. They have a zeal for God, but not according to knowledge. For if they being ignorant of God's righteousness, and going about to establish their own righteousness, have not submitted themselves to the righteousness of God. For Christ is the end of the law for righteousness to everyone who believes. To what ignorance of the Jews does the apostle refer to in this passage when he says according to the knowledge, not according to knowledge, This, they did not recognize the righteousness that is valid in the sight of God. That is their lack of understanding. They imagine that they must be zealous on behalf of the law, for it was most assuredly God's law. How anyone would depart from it. If they had paid attention to Paul's preaching, they would have soon observed that Paul allowed the law to remain in force, seeing that they would not become enemies of the gospel, and the dreadful darkness which settled upon them like the pall of night would have been dispelled. Our next lesson will be lecture chapter 9, not or ninth evening lecture. So that is quickly part 2 of our eighth reading from C.F.W. Walther's The Proper Distinction Between Law and Gospel.